I need to say this, apparently. I learned that there are people who don't know that it exists and that it's ready to use. It exists and it's ready to use. And people use it. Yeah, so this is what most people run today still. Curio is getting pretty good adoption. It's not over half of the network as far as I am aware. I might be wrong, but most people run something resembling this. Lotus miner stack is not very simple, and it, like the idea behind Curio is, okay, we need to simplify the setup. We should make it highly available, eliminate at least some single points of failure, and so. When you look at this, like the services that run in a typical Lotus miner setup, it's a few single points of failure. So the red boxes here is like, if this process dies, something will stop working, or most things will stop working, or everything will stop working. So, and also it's like just a whole bunch of things to set up and manage, and this also is tied to like a single on-chain miner ID. So now if you have to move resources between miner IDs, I'm sorry. But, and yeah, like it's just not a great architecture. It's kind of grown organically over time. Like we started shipping the network, everything lived in Lotus. Then we extracted Lotus Miner from Lotus. So it's like, okay, well, doesn't scale. We need to add workers. The first iteration was really bad. The second iteration was not good. And what we have now is semi-acceptable. And yeah, like this software was written with the assumption of like, okay, no OSP is going to cross like a petabyte with this thing. And then I've learned that there are people running whole data centers with this. So, dumb. And yeah, then like organically over time, we kind of extracted Boost from Lotus Miner, and Boost kind of has its own like small garden of microservices that don't really do anything. They just are annoying to set up. They don't scale. They don't provide HA. They exist. And so, okay, so how do we simplify this? And we kind of took inspiration from like the Facebook way of running data centers, which is one binary on every computer, more or less. So now it's no red or yellow. And yeah, it's essentially, you just have a bunch of Lotus nodes that exist, and they sync the chain. And Curio talks to the Lotus nodes in a gigabyte cluster, which is also just a bunch of nodes that exist and work. And like, sure, like Curio nodes have roles, but for the most part, just put out binary on the server and forget about it. So Curio does a lot of things. It might not be clear initially of just how much it's already done, but yeah, it's full feature parity with Lotus pretty much. It very soon will be full feature parity with Boost. Then yeah, everything about it is horizontally scalable. There's like no single thing where it's like supposed to be a bottleneck. It's like horizontally scalable, zero downtime. It's like full HA architecture. It's like how you should do this kind of software. And like other nice things, like SupraSeal support is a thing now. It is so much cheaper than the old way of doing things. I don't think it makes sense to keep all the machines. Like better to sell off parts and machines and buy SupraSeal hardware. It's a different world. And then. Oh yeah.
Okay. But well, actually, I just want to Why is it cheaper? Just high level, in case maybe people don't understand, besides the...
Yeah, so the difference is with current sealing, current way of doing sealing, so pre-Supra seal, you need 56 gigabytes of memory of RAM per sector. With Supra seal, you don't need any because that's changed to NVMe, which is cheaper than RAM. And then also the new Supra seal, in the old way of doing things, you need like at least 2 cores per sector. In Supra seal, a single core can do like 4 sectors, so it's like 16x better CPU utilization. And yeah, you also don't need pretty much any memory in the server.
Would it be safe to summarize for those that haven't experienced this stuff before, that the overhead and cost of the sealed sector has gone from something like 80 cents each to about 5 cents each, potentially, depending on the configuration you come up with? And you have to keep in mind that the process of sealing does not directly benefit the end user. So the more we can minimize this, the more we can marginalize this OpEx, the more profitable the miner becomes, and or the more cost efficient our storage network becomes. And it dropping by a factor of 40, or what is it, 20, something like that, 80 cents to 5 cents, that is substantial. You guys are doing fantastic, by the way.
How are you coming up with that number, though?
That's based on the cycle time for, say, a standalone 4090 type GPU running the conventional loaded sealing operation versus an A5000 class super seal rig across 8 commodity NVMe drives that are able to hold a sustained rate of 64 sectors every 4.5 hours. Thereabouts. That sounds right about you?
Yeah, essentially I calculate, okay, I buy a machine to seal sectors at some optimal rate, then okay, over 3 years, this machine is going to use this much power, it's going to produce this many sectors, and you just divide the total cost of like capex plus opex for the machine and divide it by the number of sectors it produced. And
basically the maximum number of sectors amortized over 5 years.
Yeah, it's like over 3, the number.
There begins to begin that cost efficiency curve. As you get into more esoteric hardware, more capabilities, it becomes on a cost per sector basis. There's diminishing returns as you go above the ridiculous zone.
Yeah, there's like a point where you start talking about like, okay, so we like RDMA into this like GPU box with like 2 400 gigabit NICs. It's like, okay, maybe it stops making sense to get there, but like there's like a point where it's like you get fairly straightforward hardware and it's already like 5-6 cents per sector over 3-year amortization. It's pretty good, and it's very good. Then yeah, like other things. So we changed how configuration works. It is still kind of familiar in a way that it's like this TOML, but it's really not very visible as TOML to users now. We have this concept of layers, and essentially a layer just overrides some part of your settings, and you just keep the layer config in the database, and then when you start your node, you just specify, okay, this node uses this config, this config, this config layer. And when you change a single layer in the database, you can affect like 100 nodes. Because like, okay, those are storage nodes. They do those specific things. I want to change something about how storage works in my cluster. You just change one thing in the config editor, and then you restart the nodes. We actually want to add a tool to the config editor where like if you modify some layer, you get a button, okay, now restart all the nodes affected by this change. It would be so nice. Yeah, we'll get it. So,
great job at that stuff, by the way. The orchestration, I just want to I want to blow my trumpet in your general direction. You guys have done such an outstanding job of disaggregating the sequential services involved with managing a Filecoin backend, and it can be disaggregated. It's the aggressive scheduler, the tunables. Like you mentioned, the storage thing. I just went crazy when I saw I could have different storage paths for different parts of the sealing artifacts and the cache files and the sealed sectors. It's all in the box, but you don't have to touch it if you don't need to. So again, buku kadoos and stuff like that for you guys. You did fantastic.
Yeah, so like this is all the boring stuff we have now. They're like, web UI, we have built-in alerts. It's a pretty nice feature. It lets you sleep. Just like enable integrations. Like, okay, I can go to sleep, and if my phone beeps, that means something is broken. I have to stare at dashboards all the time, or like hope that my own custom alerts are correct. Yeah, so coming soon, the full bolster replacement. It's still +0 microservices. Everything about the built-in market is going to be horizontally scalable and like obviously fault tolerant. We also just pulled in all of Sid Gravity inside of Curio. Just seems logical to put it there. I guess everyone is using it anyway, so like might as well not rely on a centralized thing. And then proof of data possession. It's this alternate deal protocol where essentially you work with data aggregators like Storacha or Akave, and we work with Storacha. And essentially the way it will work is you kind of sign up as a provider to Storacha. They give you a key to win to Curio, and then they just talk to you, and they get the clients to upload data to you and just like prove the data and get paid. That is the idea. Just like another nice income stream for SPs. Then, yeah, so this is coming really, really soon. It should be like next month in production for markets, and then I would say PDP, it really doesn't depend on us at this point. It's built in Curio, but the like time to ship those services is going to take a while. So I would say ask Storacha or Akave. Then yeah, so what we are up to. Little things, then we really want to ship ZK Snark Marketplace because there is a lot of GPUs on the internet that are not in use and that are much, much, much cheaper than GPUs in your data center. I'm pretty sure that we can reduce POREP Snark cost by like 10x. And also you don't need to mess with GPUs for those in your data center. It's like, okay, just send the inputs to Snarks over the internet to someone.
To clarify, this is what we've talked about being remote POREP.
No, this is not remote POREP.
Okay, so clarify this a little bit because I'm a little confused.
This is like the C2.
Oh, C2, okay.
C2 or like the Snark compute. It also really helps with SupraSeal because, with SupraSeal, the thing is like you sell some of your PC1 hardware, you buy a few SupraSeal machines in a way that appears to be reasonable. Then you discover you have 10x more sectors and now don't have GPUs for Snarks. Especially if you start also trying to sell sectors later with NI POREP, which requires 10x more Snarks. So it's like, okay, and now I need 100 times more GPUs than I have today. Yeah, so it feels like it's a piece that needs to exist. And yeah, so that's the plan to ship this still this year.
The tooling and providers of said marketplace, the actual supply side of that, who's building that?
It's just Curio, just run Curio. It's like, okay, I want to sell Snarks.
Okay.
And like essentially, if you have spare GPU capacity, you can just also participate in this. Okay, I want to, if I don't have any GPUs in use, and the Snark marketplace is like above this price, I will take orders.
Can you explain the object store support?
We
What
get
that
there.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that would be like the next thing. So Q1 25 object storage support is for storing sectors. So instead of using file systems, you can have like a massive min.io or like one of the like other 5 decent options. And essentially the difference is that now instead of having those like storage workers, every worker has direct access to the object storage and they just talk directly to it. And this is something like if you have like hundreds of petabytes of sectors, managing individual servers with hard drives is really annoying. And also object storage has this nice property of like it's all nicely erasure coded and can load balance. So if you have like 1,000 hard drives, you can do roughly like 300k IOPS out of that. It's maybe not that direct translation, but your IOPS scale much better, and they spread much better. So like if you spread a sector over like 100 hard drives, then the load, like if you have a lot of retrievals in one hot sector, you don't have to cache it that much. The plan is to ship it pretty soon. It also makes some other things much nicer. So reading post challenges will become much faster, especially on like it's just not going to be sequential like it is today. So coming. Then yeah, other things. So deal protocol v2, we are replacing Boost, and the Boost deal protocols are really annoying. The one thing, yeah, I guess I didn't mention it, but the Curio market requires you to set up a public HTTPS endpoint. Now, it is really simple to do because Curio has a built-in server, so it is roughly, you need to expose one public port on a public IP, and that's it. And you have to give it a domain name, but fairly simple, basic stuff. And we're gonna have docs, but like it's not that hard to figure out. But what that endpoint means is now, instead of having to expose a small garden of ports for like Boostly P2P, IPNI, there were like some other things. You just kind of, Booster HTTP, Booster Bitswap. You just expose this one endpoint, and it has all of those things on like under this one endpoint that is scalable. And like, because like you can have multiple Curio nodes in your cluster serve the endpoint and then load balance it, or like do failover and like all the standard things you would expect. And obviously that also means that retrievals and data like ingest from at least PDP is scalable, and that also makes us have a highly available libp2p node for Boost deals. But so, okay, we have this HTTP endpoint. Why do we not add support for making deals over just a simple HTTP API? So, like you just, okay, I want to make a deal. So I just send a simple signed JSON to some public HTTP endpoint, and that's a deal. I have to run a libp2p node and do a whole bunch of bespoke seaboard things. And also, like, we can put in ACLs and stuff like that in there while at it, because why not? Should have put paid retrieval somewhere in here. We'll see, maybe. And yeah, so a full CD marketplace. I also want to make this exist. If you are on USB and like both the ZK Snark marketplace and seeding marketplace exists, then you really just need hard drives to become an SP on, I guess, good internet. But they should drastically reduce the barrier to entry to the network from like tens of thousands of USD. Well, like I would say, like, 50K is probably like a reasonable low barrier today to like, okay, if a NAS with some hard drive is like 1-2K USD, and you can become a reasonable SP, just trading some OPEX, but like probably that's fine.
Is that the right slide actually, or is there another slide on there? Sorry, are we looking at the right?
No, yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
So I'm going to ask a question about that exact. And for some people in the room, we briefly talked about this, but basically an appliance, right? It is a remote appliance. There's a FIP that needs to be passed in order for us to do this, right?
No, it's fine. We can do it without it.
Okay.
It's much harder
because of the SPID portion, right? This is the blocker.
Yeah. So, well, it's not a blocker. It just makes it much harder to coordinate. It's not impossible though.
So for some people in the room and people on the recording, is that the barrier to entry really to get into Filecoin is 50K and above, and we all see this as a blocker where if somebody wanted to develop appliance, or they want to literally put a 1 gig connection on their local machine they bought and rack some 18 terabyte drives and put them in a RAID config, it's very hard to do right now, if near impossible.
Yeah. So the difference, without this would be like the sealer ID FIP.
Right.
We want to get it done sooner than later, and I think I also would say it's really important. But so the difference is without sealer ID, if I am a garage SP and want to buy sectors from the network, I have to order them straight, like from some SP, to produce them after I order them. And with sealer ID, if I am an SP with like sealing hardware and it's idle, I can just immediately go and like start sealing sectors for no one in particular. And now, if there is this marketplace that already exists and is bootstrap and lively, this honestly is not that much of a difference. You just never you're not able to stockpile sectors for, to be able to take advantage of higher prices. You just have to kind of take orders from the market now and fulfill them directly. But it's a small market inefficiency. Not
was big enough to scale to those levels of efficiency either. And so if we take, you and I talked just a little. We talked just a little bit about splitting up the proof worker itself and the back-end storage it's retrieving from, making it an atomic block request, and all the 384 megs that comes down for the proving window. If I can have a box of JBODs in my home and I can be tethered to, say, the sealed storage compute network where they can do those remote retrievals between continents, and we can still make the proving windows in enough time, all of a sudden that enables smaller operators, if you will, the Bitcoin class operators, to start piling up JBOD and tethering themselves to a larger operator. And then once you get to that point, then you can start thinking about the appliance node that does the sealing operations for a given class or cluster of storage nodes, completely disaggregated, because it works whether it's co-resident or across continents.
Yeah, I think it's even simpler than that. I don't think, the appliance way of doing things is not here, but honestly, the marketplaces should enable that just fine. You shouldn't even need to give out the ownership of your keys in this case. You just own the SP.
I'm not sure.
It depends on what kind of SP you want to do. Okay, if I just want to print money with hard drives, then I would go for the appliance thing and someone else manages. That is Ramo, which is fine, but also you're pretty sure you can make way more money with those things because you're not splitting profits with.
I think we can also, this exact conversation is going to evolve once we talk through some things on my wish list. I just want to guide the conversation a little bit to how are you closing the loop of feature requests? If they come in, how are you taking those? Because that's another thing that's come up is people have said how do I ask Curio for something? Your team's been very good at fielding this, but do you have a formal feature request channel that is open?
So in general, we just have channels, direct channels with a bunch of SPs.
Okay.
You're oh, hey, we should work, and just ask, me or Rears to just set up a channel to work directly, and then like things like object storage support is coming directly from like APAC SP needs, for example. It is okay, so we need this because we have so much storage. This is like not reasonable to use anything else.
From the future Curio, we'll just call it sustainability standpoint, there's also been a strong question around, when am I going to have to pay for this?
Marketplace.
Okay.
It's like, if there's this marketplace, it's lively, and we earn a cut of the volume, and it's still much cheaper than doing things yourselves. It gives us a business model to build around, and don't have to rely on any other funding sources. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes, but this is the idea behind it.
Can we ask really quickly, would you be willing to pay for support? This is a question that came up. I talked to I want to say Andrew Jackson about this. Yeah. Is that if you had a priority support, would you pay for it? $100 a month.
I mean, it'll be paying much more. It's the thing. It's a very hard sell.
I still maintain that a better model than a subscription support, which in game theory logic would promote you guys to create things that require support, right? A better revenue stream, no single SP is big enough to fund internal development. And if they do, it gets locked behind some kind of barrier to benefit the public. And I've also not been terribly impressed with the governance of what gets chosen to work on and whatnot, that it seeks to find gentleman's consensus in a room full of like-minded people. What I would favor is a limited partnership, wherein if 3 or 4 or 5 SPs figure out that they have a common need and each one of them fund 20% of the development effort, that becomes a revenue stream that drives development. And more importantly, rather than utopian projections of what could be, people are willing to pull out their checkbooks and vote with their checkbook. I think that is a model that would help sort wishful thinking from practical applications, because you're not going to pull out your checkbook unless you think you can make the money back, which is the thing we care about.
And I can tell you that the Filecoin Foundation CFO would really love that, not to have to spend any of our own money, and versus just getting other people to pay for it. It's I won't tell you who that is in the room, but he might be here.
So like we have a bunch of models to get ourselves on a long-term stable ground.
Everybody wants you to be around. They're loving everything you're producing.
It will be very unfortunate, PMF wise. There'll probably be a few SPs that'll be very disappointed if we aren't around. So but I'm pretty optimistic about the future. It looks pretty good.
Perfect.
And so maybe going back to this, there's like this one last point, which appears fairly random, but I don't know, it feels like it might be a pretty big thing. So confidential compute is kind of the TE 2.0, just this trusted compute on CPUs, and it allows us to do a whole bunch of cool things. Essentially, like as a primitive, it makes it possible to spawn virtual machines that are not possible to mess with. So the virtual machine knows it's running in a secure context, and the CPU can prove it to the virtual machine and to the virtual machine owner. And essentially, we can use it for a bunch of proofs, and to allow clients to run compute on SP data, which should be pretty cool. So other use cases. Other use cases are like we probably can use this stuff to give better retrieval reports to clients or attestations. Essentially, like you can just run code on SP hardware that proves that things happened in a kind of a way that Snarks also can, but it's much cheaper because it's just running at that fairly native speed. It's supported in Milan and like Ice Lake and later, so it's a bit unfortunate it's not Rome, but probably fine. And I imagine it's going to be a pretty big thing over time.
Do you see those things being Curio features or Filecoin features? In the sense of like...
We'll see. I would say this is mostly going to be tightly integrated with Filecoin. So, like compute on data, there's like this runtime called like kata containers, which lets you run any OCA containers, which is, you can run Docker and Kubernetes. And so, if we build something that says like some clients run container, or like just you're able to literally Docker run things on SPs and pay for that in Filecoin and have like SP side resources mounted. So like, storage from sectors. So like have sectors mounted in the containers. It feels like a very good thing for Filecoin as a whole.
I'll rephrase, I guess. I don't disagree with what you just said, but I don't see them necessarily needing to be Filecoin protocol level features but they can be things that Curio provides.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
if we wanted, we could call this like L2 something. Yeah, this is far enough in the future that it's in such a nebulous ground that we'll see where we get with it. Just it's literally like 2 weeks ago before the fucking hacker house. Most people here didn't even know that CC, like the confidential compute stuff, existed, let alone what it could do. So, evolving kind of situation.
Running Curio on Kubernetes. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, I would say. And you have, like, the file system overheads are fine. You're not running SupraSeal in Kubernetes. That really doesn't make sense. But like other things, maybe, I don't know. I don't think it makes much sense though. Like Curio itself is its own like cluster management, task runtime, scheduling things. So probably not necessary. Yeah, no, it's much simpler. It's like, okay, server, a single binary, server, single binary. And yeah, that should be all you need to do. More question?
I just want to go back to Paul's question, whether we would pay. I think from an SP perspective, if it helps reducing our operation cost overhead, right? We could reduce human headcount from our side, and then we have more features implemented that we want. I think we would actually consider paying if it reduces our cost from that side. Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Internally in the team, we kind of would like to avoid living in a world where we get paid for support. It just feels like not the best business model, especially in a network where SPs it's like no direct translation of like, okay, what's the value here? And I know the support models can be pretty good. Like there's a ton of companies which work on support, but maybe we shouldn't go there, at least not in the current state of the network. So, the idea is like maybe there's like some features that are more premium, but like we already kind of pledged that, okay, so Curio is always going to be free for the parts that you used to have in Lotus Miner. Like, okay, maybe like some fancier supraseal support is going to be paid at some point or something like that.